G'day battlers, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different because today we're going to be diving into PvPoke to get a bit of an understanding as to what the Open Great League meta actually looks like. We're going to be learning our matchups, and I don't just mean, scrolling down the PvPoke top 10, I mean we're going to be diving in and taking a look at where the win cons are, what matchups do you need to land a bait in, what matchups do you need 2 big moves to go through, maybe some matchups you can only win if you get 2 shields to your name. We're going to find that out and more. I mean, maybe we'll even find some IV dependent matchups along the way, some matchups that could be skirted around with some one-turn lag. All the same, we're going to find it all out today, and we're sort of going to be focusing on the top of the meta. So I've got below me the Dortmund top 12 graphic, the regional championship that was just held in Europe this last weekend gone, first regional of the European season as well. So this is really sort of what is happening in the evolving meta, and so with all that said, let's just get into it. So we'll be starting off with not only the PvPoke rank 1, but the PvPoke rank 2, because they both belong to Clodsire. So Clodsire is apparently so good, it is literally at the top 2 of the PvPoke rankings. Rank 1 is Sludge Bomb and rank 2 is Stone Edge. I'm not actually sure why Sludge Bomb and Earthquake is sort of ordered this way, and then Earthquake and Stone Edge is ordered this way, but they've both got Earthquake. So essentially, let's just dive into Clodsire. And I think the easiest way to do that is by first off taking a look at a multi-battle. Taking a look at what the differences are sort of between these Clodsires. So this is Clodsire simulated against the entire Open Great League. So this includes everything from your big meta picks like Dunsparce to your not so meta picks like Galarian Meowth. So against literally any Pokemon, you are going to be winning against 80% of them. So obviously pretty good, but it doesn't really tell you much that's any use. It's just that a lot of the stuff isn't very good in PvP, so you're generally going to beat those Pokemon. So what is much more useful is taking a look at this data, which is taking a look at Clodsire versus the sort of Great League meta as deemed by PvPoke. So you can see that we've got a pretty sort of even distribution. It is tilting a little bit towards the win column. So we do have 24 Pokemon on the win side of this sort of middle tie line, and we have 14 Pokemon on the lose side in the one shield scenario. And then we have 2 Pokemon that draws as well. I'm assuming that one of them is just going to be Clodsire itself because they are separated on the thingo. So let's first take a look at the things that Clodsire actually beats. So first of all, there's things like the fairy types, so Clefable and Wigglytuff. They're going to be weak to that poison sting damage, and Clodsire is actually going to resist all of that fairy damage, so it makes sense. And there's also grass types like Jumpluff. We see Chestnut up here, Serperior. Similar scenario where you're able to do super effective damage and you don't care too much about their charge attacks. There's other Pokemon here like Toxapex and Skeledirge. They're weak to that. They take super effective damage from the Earthquake, and then they also can't damage you too much. There's Pokemon like Machamp that, you're going to be doing poison damage. You've got the poison typing, so you resist their Karate Chop Cross Chop, which is really spammy and really fast, but if it's resisted, doesn't really do all that much. And then, there's some other Pokemon here like Guzzlord, Azumarill. Azumarill is definitely one we're going to be looking at. Dunsparce is going to be one of the most important ones that we're going to look at. We'll actually look at that one first. But then, of course, there's other Pokemon here like Shadow Feraligatr is listed in the win column. That one can sort of go either way, depending. We'll take a look at that as well, of course. Yeah, we actually have both Clodsires hanging out as the 2 ties. There's sort of ways around that, but maybe we'll talk about that in a sec as well. And then generally you're going to be losing to Pokemon such as Typhlosion, which is, again, not really that cut and dry, but you sort of are able to lose against Mandibuzz when you've got this Sludge Bomb moveset. You've got Abomasnow actually being able to beat you as well. Regular Feraligatr, Malamar, Oranguru, which is a big one, Diggersby, Quagsire, and then, of course, your ground types are sort of your biggest counters to Clodsire, being that Shadow Marowak with Mud Slap, Gastrodon with Mud Slap, Quagsire with the Mud Shot, not even needing to run Mud Bomb. You can just run Mudshot Aqua Tail and you'll actually be able to beat Clodsire if you're the Shadow Quagsire, and then Diggersby as well with the Scorching Sands coming out relatively quick as well. So I've got the Matrix simulation of Stone Edge Clodsire up against the Sludge Bomb Clodsire, all against the top 40 meta picks from PvPoke. And essentially what this does is it just converts, it shows you which Pokemon it wins against in the 1 shield scenario, because we've got it set to 1 shield and 1 shield. And which ones it's going to lose against, and it'll actually highlight the ones where it's actually a little bit different depending on what moveset you run. So we'll go through some of these as well, and as I said, we'll go through Dunsparce first, but I think we can look at the differences straight away. So we can actually see that Stone Edge is sort of the default. If you run Sludge Bomb instead of Stone Edge, you'll actually pick up matchups against grass types, so Chestnut and Serperior. You'll be able to pick up those wins. You'll also be able to pick up a win against Cresselia in the one shield, and also actually against Greninja in the one shield, which isn't like the most important matchup, but you know, it's something that you're going to be able to get a win against just by having that move that is a little bit more spammy than the Stone Edge. Unfortunately, you are going to lose a couple matchups as well if you go for Sludge Bomb, so you're not going to be able to beat Arctibax in the one shield, Dugong, Mandibuzz, Sableye, and I mean, these first three make sense. Arctibax, Dugong, and Mandibuzz would all be taking super effective damage from the Stone Edge, so it makes sense that they become worse when you remove the ability for that super effective damage. Sableye is a bit of an interesting one. I guess you just need that little bit of extra damage from the Stone Edge as opposed to the Sludge Bomb, but there's not a lot of Stabilize running around, to be honest with you, especially not with the Foul Play Return movesets, but you know, you can sort of see here that as it goes down, some of them are going to be absolutely identical. So against Goodra, you know, it's the exact same thing. You probably just throw Earthquake the entire time through, I assume, if we sort of take a look at one of them. Which one's this? Okay, this is the Stone Edge version. You win with 1 turn difference. You get a bait with the Stone Edge and then land the Earthquake. And I guess on the other side, you bait with the Sludge Bomb and then you land the Earthquake. So relative... Oh, you actually land 2 Sludge Bombs instead. So a little bit more consistent, I suppose. But anyway, well, let's start looking at Dunsparce. I said we were going to look at Dunsparce. Let's look at Dunsparce. If we take a look at Sludge Bomb, Clodsire up against the Dunsparce, in the one shield scenario, we can see that Clodsire is actually landing 2 Earthquakes after getting a Sludge Bomb bait, and then it's sort of able to get a win with a little bit of HP stocked up. I don't really like this. This feels quite unsafe to me. I mean, you have to get a shield with the Sludge Bomb and then successfully land the 2 Earthquakes, and it says that with 4 turns of difference, Dunsparce will actually be able to get to the Drill Run. It only needs 1 more rollout, which is 3 turns, and then 1 turn to throw the move. So if we just go straight Earthquake, for example, we'll be able to see in this one shield scenario, Clodsire actually loses by a turn. It barely gets up to that Earthquake, but it isn't able to throw it because this Drill Run does KO. Now, if you're the Dunsparce in this scenario, you do have to be aware that 1 turn lag is quite frequent in the game, so this matchup isn't necessarily guaranteed, but it's good to know that when the game is working properly, if the opponent goes straight Earthquake and you use 1 shield, you should be able to get this last move off and win the game, assuming you throw in good timing, assuming both players throw in good timing. So straight Earthquake doesn't work. What if we actually go straight Sludge Bomb? Maybe Sludge Bomb can just add up enough, and the answer is no, Sludge Bomb doesn't do enough, which means that for Clodsire to be able to win this matchup, we actually are going to need to land some sort of bait scenario. So obviously the way that PvPoke has it is you get that Sludge Bomb bait and then you land 2 Earthquakes. You know, we can sort of play around here, like, you know, what happens if instead of this second Earthquake, we only throw the Sludge Bomb? Where does that actually leave us? And the answer is, unfortunately, Dunsparce is able to get to the Drill Run and it will KO the Clodsire. So this feels like a very fickle matchup. You really need to land 2 Earthquakes to comfortably be able to do this in the one shield. But of course, you know, this is all assuming that it's perfect baits, it's perfect scenarios, and in the one shield scenario. So maybe if you're the Clodsire, you're like, this doesn't feel safe enough. What happens if we go to 2 shields? So let's find out. If we go to the 2 shield scenario, again, PvPoke default sims, we're actually going to get 2 Sludge Bomb baits. We're going to land a Sludge Bomb, and we're also going to land an Earthquake, whereas Dunsparce is doing nothing except throwing those super effective Drill Runs. So, and in the end of the day, that last Sludge Bomb is enough to KO the Clodsire, KO the Dunsparce, and Dunsparce still needs 2 more rollouts, 7 turns, 2 rollouts is 6 turns, plus 1 turn to throw the charge attack to KO the Clodsire. But, you know, this Earthquake is still hanging out. So let's do our check. Let's see, can we win this matchup straight Sludge Bomb? Because if you know you can win a matchup just by throwing 1 move consistently, then it can really help your game to just sort of know that you don't have to worry about baiting. You don't have to try and throw. And it says here that Clodsire actually wins the 2 shield scenario straight Sludge Bomb, which is handy, but again, 1 turn of difference. can flip the matchup. So two things can happen that can ruin your day here. First is that one turn lag, which again is quite prevalent at the moment as we're sort of recording this. And the other way is if you just throw on bad timing. You know, if you sort of throw Poison Sting is 2 turns, Rollout is 3 turns, this PvPoke simulation assumes that you throw perfectly so that you never let the opponent get a single free turn. So for example, you know, you throw 1 Poison Sting, they throw 1 Rollout, Rollout takes 3 turns, Poison Sting takes 2 turns, and then you use that 3rd turn to throw the charge attack, you give your opponent 0 free turns. But if you throw 2 Poison Stings and take 4 turns, the opponent throws their 1 Rollout 3 turns, you're still throwing your 2nd Poison Sting while they start a new rollout, and then you end up throwing the move, you give them a free turn. So you need to play perfectly here, and the game needs to not lag, and then you'll be able to win straight Sludge Bomb in the 2 shield scenario. So this is sort of good to know, and it doesn't look like it's going to be super IV dependent because you do have a little bit of health. Of course, we can sort of do little quick checks here, like, you know, what if we have a super attack weighted Clodsire? It's actually got a little bit less health. Are we still able to win? And the answer is actually no. If we have an attack weighted Clodsire, then these drill runs just do a little bit too much damage, and we actually aren't able to survive. We don't have enough HP. So not only is it only sort of for good rank Clodsires, but then you need to sort of make sure you're throwing on good timing as well. So I think that timing is a good skill to learn if it isn't one that you already know. And I think there's a lot of resources out there that can help you do it. I've been thinking about maybe putting a video together. I mean, for the YouTubers watching this back, leave a comment below if that's something you might be interested in. But, you know, it's a bit of a dicey situation, and so you should probably check your Clodsire IVs by going to PvPoke, sort of plugging them in here. Maybe you've got a 5, 6, 13 Clodsire that you've built. You can then sort of, you know, do the simulations like, oh, you know, am I able to win this one? And this Clodsire is actually able to, although it is a little bit closer because you are only on 5 HP and 4 turns of difference, will be able to flip the matchup. But, you know, Dunsparce IVs can change as well. So what if we have an attack weighted Dunsparce? Maybe that makes it so much worse for you. Dunsparce wins. Clodsire actually loses if it is a attack-weighted Clodsire. Now, this is attack-weighted Clodsire versus this random spread. Let's just assume that we've sort of learned, like, okay, good rank Clodsire is good to have. Clodsire actually still loses. So attack-weighted Dunsparce, I guess you're just able to do a little bit more damage with these drill runs. And so you're, does the Rollout do the same amount of damage? Actually, Rollout is doing 4 damage. When we had a high rank Dunsparce, these rollouts are only doing 3 damage. So high attack Dunsparce is actually able to do 1 extra damage with each rollout. And as we saw before, when Clodsire only had that like 5 HP, or here it has 13 HP, that can actually really add up because there's what? Yeah, there's more than 13 rollouts here. So that's actually why high attack Dunsparce is able to get the win here. So maybe something to consider. I mean, high attack Dunsparce, you'd also get the charge attack priority against other Dunsparces. And, you know, if we sort of throw Dunsparce versus Dunsparce here and we give one of them just, you know, a big, that's a high attack Dunsparce versus the rank 1 Dunsparce, then we do end up actually seeing the high attack Dunsparce winning because it wins the charge attack priority on the very last charge attack. So maybe something to consider, although we'll see if that maybe has effects against some of the other matchups. You know what? Let's actually find out if that does make any sense by doing another multi-battle simulation. Let's add in a high rank Dunsparce. So let's set it to the rank 1 Dunsparce, and let's add in a high attack Dunsparce. Of course, the absolutely mythical, wonderful 1502 Dunsparce, and let's just run it against the Great League sort of meta Pokemon, and we'll see if there are any differences. Okay, the high rank Dunsparce seems like it may not be the source. It says you're losing the matchups against Ariados, against Carbink, Cresselia, Feraligatr, Guzzlord, Guzzlord, Licky, and Oranguru. You do pick up Dugong though, so maybe not the greatest of calls, although this is like the super attack weighted, right? So, you know, what if we reduce the attack a little bit? What if, you know, this comes back up to a 10 or something? It's like, you know, not as crazy. And we hit the battle. Yeah, we're still losing a gazillion matchups. So I think that this shows 2 important things. Number 1, if you focus too much on a single PvPoke simulation, you could miss a lot of other stuff that you are going to be losing. But on the other hand, you can actually specialize in this sort of ways. Like, as much as it seems crazy to have high attack Dunsparce when you're going to lose against all of these Pokemon, your opponents are preparing against their sort of generic Pokemon. So if you sort of have a Pokemon that is a little bit different, then, you know, you can decide to build it so that it is Clodsire coded, and you are able to win these Clodsire matchups really handily when your opponent is expecting to be able to win them. I think it's probably worth leaving the high attack Dunsparce alone though, because with the current metagame, the switch timer is only 50 seconds instead of being a 60-second switch timer. Certainly in my experience, games are a lot more fluid. There's a lot more swaps. You don't really see a lot of matchups playing out from start to finish. And so you're a little bit less likely to actually see these scenarios play out where you do have the Dunsparce versus the Clodsire just going straight head-to-head down the lead matchup. So I think, look, it's interesting to note that high attack Dunsparce does have that better Clodsire matchup, but probably worth leaving at home. What if we go 2 shields here? What happens if we go 2 shields? So in the 2 shield scenario, you can see that it does pick up the Clodsire, whether you're facing the Stone Edge or the Sludge Bomb. So you do pick up Clodsire, but you then lose against Abomasnow, Azumarill, Cresselia, Shadow Drapion, Feraligatr, Greninja, and Shadow Typhlosion. So yeah, if you focus too much on the top Pokemon in the meta, you may just lose to the wayside. So let's leave that one alone and let's keep going. So what do we sort of learn with the Clodsire versus Dunsparce matchup? So outside of the attack-weighted Dunsparce, which may be better in this matchup but generally loses, we learned that if you are running that Sludge Bomb Earthquake moveset, you kind of don't have the cleanest matchup straight Sludge Bomb. High rank Clodsire may be able to get it done, but it's only that 1 turn difference, and you are really relying on getting that Sludge Bomb through. On the other hand, if you are sort of game enough to try and land an Earthquake through, you only need to land 1 Earthquake in the 2 shield scenario if you can get 2 Sludge Bomb baits, which is a little bit of a big ask. But if you are in that 1 shield scenario, then you do need to land 2 Earthquakes to actually get the sort of solid win here, because otherwise Dunsparce is likely to be able to take you out. So, and that is really why Dunsparce is so highly used in the Great League meta at the moment, because it is able to get these relatively nice wins against the Clodsire while also having quite a bit of play against the rest of the meta. And really, that's why Clodsire and Dunsparce are good, realistically, because Drill Run and Earthquake, that ground damage is really quite good. But let's take a look at Stone Edge. Now, Stone Edge is probably just going to be strictly worse against the Dunsparce, and the reason why is just that it takes longer to get to. It is just that little bit more energy than Sludge Bomb, and so you don't get to them as quick. In the 1 shield scenario, you actually do still win here by landing 1 Earthquake and landing 1 landing 1 Earthquake and landing 1 Stone Edge, but yeah, look, 4 turns of difference still. It's not guaranteed. You aren't going to be able to win this one straight Stone Edge either. 11 turns. So it's actually a dominant matchup for Dunsparce if you do go straight Stone Edge, and your other recourse is going straight Earthquake. But it's just, actually, it's really close. It is that 1 turn difference. But yeah, it's just not really going to happen for you, unfortunately, because yeah, you're not going to get that Earthquake off. Unless, I guess the other thing to consider is that if you're swapping in your Clodsire, if you're using Clodsire as a bit of a safe swap and the opponent swaps Dunsparce in, then you actually can go straight Clodsire. I mean, if we go options, we just give 1 Poison Sting energy advantage and we hit battle. All of a sudden, Clodsire is winning by 1 turn instead of losing by 1 turn. So something to consider with Clodsire as a safe swap, and I think it is quite a popular one because there's, not a lot of hard counters running around. A lot of people are running Dunsparce as one of their big Clodsire counters, and if that's the case, not so much of a safe swap counter. If you have a 1 Poison Sting advantage, then you're actually going to be able to push it all the way and get this 1 extra Earthquake in the 1 shield. In the 2 shield, you are still going to lose though, unfortunately. So you actually lose by 1 turn. So if you happen to get 2 Poison Sting advantage, then maybe you get the job done. If you get 2 Poison Stings, then you win by 1 turn. So no, I wouldn't really count on that being how things play out, but something to consider, I suppose, if you are that if you are the Clodsire. So Let's look at another matchup for Clodsire. All right, let's take a look at Shadow Feraligatr. So let's first look at Sludge Bomb. You can see here that Stone Edge is, it says that it's a slightly better matchup than the Sludge Bomb version, but they both show as wins. But let's see how it actually plays out in reality. So in the one shield scenario, just straight sims, you get the Sludge Bomb bait, you land with the Earthquake, and Clodsire is able to win the matchup. But it's very close, and it really does sort of, rely on you landing that Earthquake. If we just go straight Sludge Bomb, you can see that Clodsire is going to lose this matchup. The Hydro Cannon's just come a little bit too fast, and this one landed Sludge Bomb does not do enough. Hydro Cannon is just too powerful. And by the same token, you're not going to be able to get, if you go for the straight Earthquakes, you do actually win straight Earthquake with 3 turns advantage because you do outpace barely to this last third Hydro Cannon. So this is something that Ryblet was talking about earlier in the stream, where because the opponent loses a turn to get this Hydro Cannon, they lose a turn to get this Hydro Cannon, they lose a turn to get their third Hydro Cannon, you sort of sneak a few extra fast attacks through, and you're able to get this second Earthquake off. So this is in the one shield scenario, going straight Earthquake. In the 2 shield scenario, you lose that quick pacing, and Feraligatr is going to be able to get to, the next Hydro Cannon that will be enough to KO you. So, there is that. And I feel like in general, most Shadow Feraligatrs do tend to be left with 2 shields. But if you are in a scenario where the opponent only has 1 shield remaining and you do have that Clodsire versus Feraligatr matchup, there is sort of place for you to win here. But the important thing to keep in mind, and let's go back to the one shield scenario here where Clodsire is able to win a straight Earthquake. Just like we saw against that Dunsparce, if we actually give the energy advantage to Feraligatr here, if we give it 1 Shadow Claw advantage, then all of a sudden Clodsire is able to lose because Feraligatr has sort of already used up 2 of those turns and is now able to get to the third Hydro Cannon just as Clodsire gets to the charge attack. And even if there's sort of, 1 turn lag, Feraligatr is going to win that charge attack priority quite comfortably as well against Clodsire. So really a bit of a dicey spot here. So in the same way that if Clodsire is the safe swap, you can't really bring in Dunsparce as a counter. If Feraligatr is the swap, you can't really bring Clodsire in as the answer. Conversely, if the opponent swaps their Feraligatr into your Clodsire as your safe swap, then that's also quite good. So there's sort of a reason why a lot of people decide to bring Clodsire as a safe swap Pokemon, and this is definitely one of them that you are able to muscle through this Feraligatr matchup. Shadow Feraligatr, I should say. If it's actually the non-Shadow Feraligatr, it's relatively similar in that, you still get to the 2 Earthquake. Actually, let's take the, it is already, it's got no energy at the start now. You'll see that because Feraligatr has a little bit more bulk to it, 1 Earthquake isn't enough to push it over the edge. And so now, at 9 HP remaining, Feraligatr is able to get this last Hydro Cannon off, and that is enough to KO you. Yeah, it only works against the Shadow Feraligatr, doesn't end up working against the regular Feraligatr, which is something good to keep in mind. Now let's just see if it actually does work out, say we put Sludge Bombs back in, say you're able to get a Sludge Bomb bait against this sort of regular Feraligatr. It still says you lose because, you get the Sludge Bomb bait, you're then going to land the Earthquake. Oh no, it actually goes for the Sludge Bomb because it thinks, I don't know what it's thinking, to be honest, because I'm pretty sure instead, if we go to sandbox mode, if we just say do a Poison Sting instead, then we will actually be able to get to a, I think we can get to an Earthquake here. Yeah. We can throw the Earthquake. So I think this could be Earthquake instead, actually. Yeah, just to make sure the opponent can't get another Hydro Cannon off. So you actually still lose. The Earthquake still doesn't do enough damage, same as before. But yeah, I'm not sure why PvPoke throws the Sludge Bomb here, but it doesn't matter because you are still going to lose the matchup. So regular Feraligatr, if the opponent is running it, is generally going to be able to get that win out just because, it has enough bulk to take the Earthquakes. If you go to the 2 shield scenario, a Clodsire is actually showing to win here, just going, it lands the Earthquake. Okay, so getting 2 baits with the Sludge Bomb, which this sort of works to your advantage. So I was sort of talking before about how Feraligatr, people tend to give Feraligatr their shields. You can sort of use that to your advantage by throwing the Sludge Bomb baits here, and you're more likely to get successful baits than you are against some other Pokemon. So when you are in the Clodsire versus Dunsparce matchup, your opponent is actually less likely to shield because generally Dunsparce is going to be able to take a move on the chin. When you're Feraligatr, you're a little bit more frail, and you kind of want to keep Feraligatr to just run through your opponent's team, and so you're more likely to try and protect protect it. And so if you are able to get the 2 protect shields here out of the sludge bombs, you do get to this earthquake that is just barely enough to KO regular Feraligatr, and the opponent is only able to get this first, only land 1 Hydro Cannon, and there's still 2 Shadow Claws away from getting to another, their 4th Hydro Cannon, the second one to land. Although, to be honest, the Shadow Claws are adding up quite a bit, and so they only need 3 more Shadow Claws to KO you, quite frankly. So this could be one that's IV dependent potentially, because it is so close. Let's say, for sake of argument, let's say we have an attack weighted Feraligatr. You know, do these Shadow Claws all of a sudden do a little bit more damage? No, we still see Clodsire getting the win here. Shadow Claw is still doing 5 damage. Okay, what if we also have an attack-weighted Clodsire? You know, what if we're running my terrible Clodsire IV spread? Clodsire all of a sudden loses. Shadow Claw is still doing 5 damage, but the big difference is that this Hydro Cannon, now instead of leaving Clodsire around, unfortunately does let Clodsire go down to 0. So you just don't have enough HP in the bank. So this is sort of one more strike in the column for you should probably run a good IV Clodsire. So, you know, if we were running the rank 1, then we are able to get this potential win if you can get 2 shields and land the earthquake. So there are a lot to sort of absorb, I suppose, but I guess, you know, one of the few takeaways from this, from this study sesh is high Clodsire is probably well worthwhile, and you can get the Feraligatr wins if you can get this damage through. But yeah, regular Feraligatr, not as good for Clodsire. Shadow Feraligatr, much better for Clodsire because you are able to outpace it, as we said before, with the earthquakes. So whatever your IVs are, you can just plug them into this. You can sort of do whatever simulations you'd like. I think it's actually more beneficial for you to do these simulations with your own IVs. I know that a lot of people in the past have sort of found that they have sort of special tech in that, you know, maybe they do have that high attack Dunsparce, and so they are able to get these Clodsire wins, right, that other people aren't able to get. It's just about knowing what your Pokemon can do, what your Pokemon can take. I know, for example, I have a Toxapex, and generally in the default PvPoke simulations, Toxapex is actually able to get the win against Malamar in the 1 shield scenario. My Toxapex is so bad that it loses that matchup because Psywave does an extra 1 damage, and it does that extra 1 damage every single half second. And so Toxapex's HP just absolutely melts away. And so if I just did the default PvPoke simulations and I ran into a tournament with Toxapex expecting to win the Malamar matchup, I would find out very quickly that it would not go my way. So it is worthwhile to give your IVs a bit of a check, just to give yourself a sanity check. And you can just do it in the, you know, in these matrix simulations against the bulk meta. You can, I think what is actually useful is, you know, do this matrix simulation where you put in the default simulation as number 1, and then you put as number 2, you click the edit check IVs button and you put in your own. So, you know, maybe you've got the 10, 5, 11, and we're running, let's just put it at Stone Edge, so it's the same as the other one. And you can literally just check by clicking battle, you know, does your IV lose or win any matchups compared to the other one? And so this fancy attack-weighted Clodsire, you are actually able to win the mirror matches against other Clodsires, but you lose the Dugong, the Dunsparce, the Shadow Gator, the Guzzlord, the Sableye, and the Alolan Shadow Sandslash. So, and this is sort of what we were finding, right? Like in both the Dunsparce matchup that we looked at and the Shadow Feraligatr matchup that we looked at, you do kind of want that high rank, high bulk Clodsire. And so it turns out that that's also going to be the case for the Guzzlord matchup, the Sableye matchup, the Dugong matchup, and the Shadow Alolan Sandslash matchup. So definitely try and get a high rank Clodsire if you can, because it seems like it will be well worth your while. Okay, let's look at the Azumarill matchup for Clodsire. So we can already see that the Stone Edge matchup is 552, the Sludge Bomb matchup is 610. So Sludge Bomb, as we would expect against the Fairy type, is going to be a little bit better than the Stone Edge, but it says that the Stone Edge version can still get the win. So first off with Sludge Bomb, I'm kind of assuming that we just go straight Sludge Bomb here and get the win, and that is exactly the case. You know, if Azumarill were to be able to get another Ice Beam, then we would be in a little bit more strife. It would KO us, but, you know, 13 turns of difference, so that's 6.5 seconds that Azumarill needs advantage to have enough energy to get through, and this sort of goes for all even scenarios. So even up to the 2 shield scenario, Clodsire is still able to just go straight Sludge Bomb. It outpaces the Azumarill. It gets to its Sludge Bombs, faster than Azumarill is able to get to its Ice Beams, and it's doing super effective damage, so it puts it in quite a strong position. I don't really expect there to be any IV shenanigans here. Azumarill is able to get the win if it has the advantage, the shield advantage, because you are able to shield up 2 Sludge Bombs, and you're able to land 2 Ice Beams, but look how close this is. 3 turns of a difference can flip this scenario. So if Clodsire, again, is acting as your safe swap, you get 2 Poison Stings before Azumarill swaps in. All of a sudden, Clodsire is going to be able to get this last Sludge Bomb off before Azumarill can get to its Ice Beam. So again, gives a little bit more credence to Clodsire as a safe swap, but if your opponent is quite quick on the swap, I mean, they're sort of unlikely to swap their Azumarill into a Clodsire, to be fair. It's just not something you're going to see happen very often, but, it's just another thing to keep in mind that Clodsire is able to win this matchup in that safe swap position. Now, let's look at the Stone Edge, because I think that's going to be a bit more interesting. You don't have the super effective damage here. It says Clodsire gets the bait with the Stone Edge and then lands an Earthquake and a Stone Edge before Azumarill gets to another Ice Beam. If we go straight Stone Edge, I'm assuming we don't output enough damage. We do not. We lose by 6 turns. We're, still another couple of Poison Stings away from getting to the Stone Edge. Well, actually, with only 9 HP left, it's actually getting the point. It's 3 Poison Stings that would be KOing the Azumarill at this point, rather than even getting the charge attack off. Yeah, so we're able to win the 2 shield to 1 shield scenario, but as soon as we go to 2 shields and they're able to shield up 2 Stone Edges, we just can't quite click on the Stone Edge to get that last KOing move through. So, again, 1 Poison Sting advantage. We actually would get the win here. So something to keep in mind, I suppose, if you are coming into this matchup with the Stone Edge Clodsire, which is a bit more risky. Actually, if you're running the Stone Edge, the opponent is more likely to use their Azumarill and swap into you just because they know that they have a little bit of a better time. But yeah, if you just get that 1 Poison Sting advantage, then all of a sudden you will be able to get to this last Stone Edge that will be enough to KO. So something to keep in mind, I suppose. It's a pretty simple one on the whole, and I think that most people are running Sludge Bomb Clodsire these days. So if you are running Sludge Bomb, then just go straight Sludge Bomb and you pretty much are going to win against Azumarill 9 times out of 10. So good to know. I was just telling chat that I didn't really want to look at the Serperior matchup, which is sort of the next one on the Dortmund graphic, because I was like, oh, there's probably not anything that interesting there. But the truth of the matter is that we don't know until he finds it. And straight away, look at this. Actually, we saw this earlier. Sludge Bomb Clodsire is able to get the win, where Stone Edge Clodsire is not able to get the win. So let's take a look at the Sludge Bomb Serperior first. Sludge Bomb Clodsire first, I should say. And yeah, we just get this Sludge Bomb off and we're able to get the win. Serperior is getting close to that next charge attack. So if it has a little bit of an energy advantage, it is going to be able to get the win off of you. But I assume that, yeah, if we push it at the 2 shield scenario, we are able to get our Sludge Bombs off relatively speedy, and they're only able to land 1 Frenzy Plant. We're able to land 1 Sludge Bomb. Our move is super effective. Their move is not. So we're able to just, edge out the win there against the Serperior, and it's a pretty cut and dry scenario, quite frankly. If we look at the Stone Edge version, though, not as clear of a story. So Stone Edge, because it just takes that little bit too long, we aren't able to get to our 3rd Stone Edge to get the KO up against Serperior. We need another 2 Poison Stings plus the ability to get the charge move off to be able to get the win here. I mean, actually, 4 damage per Poison Sting, and default simulation, they're left with 16 health remaining. So, yeah, not the cleanest of scenarios, unfortunately. Apparently, we win the 2 shield, though. How does this work? So we get the Stone Edge shielded, and then, I guess because we're just delaying the length of the battle, we're pushing it later and later and later, our Poison Sting damage is just able to add up. And with only, 128 health, and every Poison Sting doing 3% of Serperior's health with 4 damage, that actually does add up quite significantly. So if you do, this even works if you're the Sludge Bomb Clodsire, although there's no reason to burn both of your shields here. But if you can extend out the matchup here as the Stone Edge Clodsire, you can force this to be a win for you. But in general, I think this is probably a bad road to go down, because generally, I feel like you'll find that it's more worthwhile in this meta with the quick switch timers to actually just try and get a bit of an energy advantage on one of your other Pokemon. So probably not the way to go here, but just good to know if you're in a total disaster of a scenario, you can actually win the Zero Shield as well. Just by landing 2 Stone Edges, because I guess happy days, 2 Stone Edges. Well, I mean, really, what's working in your favor here is that Clodsire has a lot more health than Serperior. So even though Serperior is outpacing you to Frenzy Plant, even though Frenzy Plant does more damage than Stone Edge, it almost does double the amount of damage as Stone Edge, even though Stone Edge costs more energy. Serperior just doesn't have a lot of health, so you are able to win that one in the Zero Shield, so good to know, I suppose. And Earthquake is pretty much never the move to go for. It's less efficient than Stone Edge, it's less efficient than Sludge Bomb, so just never use Earthquake unless you're a single move Clodsire. And if you're a single move Clodsire, you've probably got other problems. So in conclusion, on the Clodsire front, I suppose that, number one, you want a high rank Clodsire. You also sort of want to be aware that a high Dunsparce could come calling for you, but if that's the case, then your opponent has got other problems. But also you do have this split between Sludge Bomb and Stone Edge. I think in general, Sludge Bomb seems like the pick that you want to go for. I know that we sort of saw that Stone Edge does have some winning matchups that Sludge Bomb doesn't necessarily. So for example, against, Stone Edge has better matchups into Talonflame or Mandibuzz, as well as the ice types like Dugong and Arctibax. But I just think that the things that you're going to be targeting with Sludge Bomb, you're more likely to find yourself in those scenarios. And just by having that charge attack that is a little bit quicker than Stone Edge, you really are able to win some pacing races, especially I think the Feraligatr is probably the biggest one, where having Sludge Bomb can be a massive boon for you just by being able to get to that last Sludge Bomb. And outpacing Feraligatr to that last Hydro Cannon that would KO you in the one shield. So in general, I think Sludge Bomb is the way, but if you sort of want to experiment a little bit, if you sort of build a team that just needs that Stone Edge coverage, it is a totally viable move to go for and might be able to get you some matches, especially, if you're in the Go Battle League, for example, where the opponent might get caught off guard by a Stone Edge and they decide to not shield because they're expecting the Sludge Bomb. So keep that in mind, but in general, I think Sludge Bomb is the way to go. But let's take a look at another Pokemon, and we'll skip Mandibuzz for now, and let's look at the difference between Feraligatr and Shadow Feraligatr. Clodsire was number 1 and number 2 on the PvPoke rankings, and Gator is number 4 and number 5. So we're going to be looking at 2 Pokemon and crossing out 4 out of the top 5 on PvPoke. So let's look at the multi-battle here. So this is regular Feraligatr against the Open Great League meta, and it actually only has 15 wins in the one shield scenario, which is a little bit underwhelming, to be honest. But as we sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, the 2 shield scenario tends to be where Feraligatr tends to shine. It actually still only has 14 wins, but I guess you're sort of looking to use the shield advantage, 2 to 1 shield, in which case you actually win 90% against 90% of the meta. And even your worst win against the meta is a relatively, it's not that bad a loss against Arctibax, but you literally win against everything else if you have a shield advantage. So something to keep in mind. If we look at the Shadow Feraligatr though, that might end up being a bit of a better story. It's actually a 95% win rate against the top meta in this 2 shield to 1 shield scenario. Wigglytuff and Toxapex able to push on through, but if we go back to a 2 to 2 shield scenario, then we end up looking at, it's only a 40%, only 40% win rate is still pretty good. And then if we look at the 1 shield scenario, Feraligatr winning 40% as well. So all in all, that just sort of gives you an indication that you're able to get a lot of matchups here. But I think where Feraligatr shines isn't in these just head-to-head thingos. It's when you use it as a safe swap, or when you're able to get, just outpace your opponent constantly and you give it those shields ready to go. So let's put this on the 1 shield. And let's check these Feraligatrs against the common meta. So this is regular Feraligatr against Shadow Feraligatr. And if we go straight to the comparison, we have a lot of differences. So Shadow Feraligatr is able to pick up wins against Arctibax, Clefable, Dunsparce, Guzzlord, Shadow Quagsire, and Sableye. That Dunsparce one is massive. And then a regular Feraligatr picks up wins against Azumarill, Clodsire, Cresselia, and Wigglytuff. So there's actually a lot of different scenarios here. We actually saw this Clodsire thing play out before, where Clodsire is able to outpace just going straight Earthquake against Shadow Feraligatr, but regular Feraligatr is just a little bit too healthy for that. So again, this is sort of where Feraligatr with a shield advantage can really come in clutch. So let's start taking a look at this Dunsparce one, because I think this is the most interesting scenario. So Shadow Feraligatr versus Dunsparce in the one shield scenario. It says that Feraligatr wins by 4 turns difference. So Dunsparce only needs one more rollout and then throw the charge attack that will be enough to KO. And to be honest, Feraligatr is getting so low that, one rollout is actually getting really close to KOing. And what does this flag? This is why you need to check PvPoke, because this flags potential IV dependence. So if our Feraligatr isn't very good, like this is rank 121, if it's just a little bit worse, if it's like, rank 900, say, and we run this simulation again, a Feraligatr actually still wins. So maybe never mind. I expected this rollout to eventually tick over to do a bit more damage. We actually scroll down on PvPoke and see that, there's you need a certain minimum defense to guarantee, they will only get 6 yada yada yada. But end of the day, maybe it's actually fine. Maybe against all scenarios. What if you have attack weighted Dunsparce? Can our attack weighted Dunsparce all of a sudden do something valuable here? Yes! Attack weighted Dunsparce to the win. Not only can attack weighted Dunsparce get the win against Clodsire, but apparently it can get the win against Feraligatr as well, because these rollouts are now doing 7 damage. And so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rollouts is an extra 9 damage. And you are now able to KO the Feraligatr before it's able to get to that last Hydro Cannon. So something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that you should use attack weighted Feraligatr, attack weighted Dunsparce, but I'm just pointing it out. I'm just throwing things out there. But let's head it back to the defaults. All right, back to the default. So yeah, just straight Hydro Cannon, straight dual run. I mean, these things pretty much run. It's pretty stock standard. In the 2 shield scenario, Dunsparce is actually able to get the win here. So each of you are only landing 1 charge attack. You land 1 Hydro Cannon and you land 1 drill run. But again, it looks like the scenario is just Dunsparce having more health in the bank, and Feraligatr just doesn't have that much health to lose, because Feraligatr has done more raw damage to the Dunsparce than Dunsparce has done back, but yeah, it's just able to hang on. So how does it go in the regular Feraligatr matchup? So default simulation, it says Feraligatr loses because this drill run is able to get to this drill run. So it looks like what the dealio is in this Shadow Feraligatr, you're doing 84 damage per Hydro Cannon. Regular Feraligatr only does 70 damage per Hydro Cannon. And you can see that, after this Hydro Cannon, Dunsparce is left with 10 HP. The Shadow Gator's Hydro Cannon is enough to close that gap. So I guess that's just, all it comes down to is being able to do a bit more damage with the Hydro Cannon. You're really not relying on the Shadow Claw damage, because against Dunsparce, it has the normal typing. It is resisted. So something to keep in mind, I suppose, is that the Shadow Gator is able to get the win. Regular Gator is not against the Dunsparce. So that's one reason why you would want to run the Shadow instead of the regular. And then, there's these other reasons, I suppose, as well. So Shadow apparently is able to pick up the Guzzlord matchup. So I think Guzzlord is sort of increasing in popularity. So let's take a little bit of a sticky peek. This is regular Feraligatr that allegedly is going to lose against Guzzlord. And so we're seeing that Hydro Cannon, I assume we actually try and land an Ice Beam. Is that what happens here? We land an Ice Beam and it's not enough to KO. Okay, I'm assuming that this Feraligatr with the Shadow, the Ice Beam is enough to KO. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just that the Ice Beam does 212 damage instead of 177 damage. So, that is definitely a pretty big difference. But because you don't have a lot of bulk left, the regular Feraligatr, actually you're losing to this Dragon Claw regardless. So it's just about being able to do enough damage with the Ice Beam. But it's 1 turn difference, which is kind of close. I'm going to say it again, and I'm sorry for saying it again, but this is sort of, again, why Feraligatr is a safe swap. Can be quite strong, because you don't need to worry about this 1 turn difference. You're going to have the energy advantage, and you'll be able to just, use it to its full effect into the Guzzlord. So, and actually the 2 shield scenario, Guzzlord is apparently able to just do enough raw Dragon Tail damage that you can just farm down. You don't have to throw a single move. You have 99 energy as well. That could not be more perfect. You're not capping. You're not going above 100. You just have 99 energy ready to unleash into the next opponent, which when Dragon Claw is only 35 energy, you can go back-to-back Dragon Claws and then almost have enough for a 3rd Dragon Claw. So it could be a little bit, and like look how much health is remaining as well. I mean, that's kind of spooky. You have lost 2 shields and the opponents use no shields, so I don't know if that's like the greatest of spots to be in, but you know, similar thing happens over here with the regular Feraligatr. But you actually do have to throw the moves. Unfortunately, Dragon Tail is only doing 10 damage instead of doing 12 damage against the Shadow. So you do actually need to throw these charge attacks. And because you need the third one, and this is the 2 shield scenario, you need to burn 2 shields and then throw the third one. So you end up with 3 energy and barely any health instead of, you know, being in that really strong position. But, you know, as soon as the Ice Beam gets shielded, you're in a pretty good spot regardless. So lesson learned is that Feraligatr needs to land the Ice Beam if you're in that Guzzlord matchup, and if you can't land the Ice Beam, you're going to be in a bit of strife. Regular Feraligatr is going to be in strife regardless, but if you're Shadow Feraligatr, you really need to land that Ice Beam, and if the opponent wants to just shield, and farm you all the way down, that is within their possibilities. So, and it's not even going to be that close. Like, they could even, you know, they have room to coming in on a safe swap. Your Feraligatr safe swap is not going to save you against a Guzzlord. If they have a Guzzlord on their team, you could be in a pickle, but you do at least get to force them to use a shield with the Ice Beam threat. So there's that at the very least. So next matchup we're going to look at is Feraligatr versus Azumarill. You can see here that the regular is able to get the win. The Shadow is actually losing barely. But, I mean, if you haven't, just guess what I'm about to tell you, because if this one turn of difference hasn't highlighted it already, you know what I'm about to say. If we give Shadow Feraligatr 1 extra Shadow Claw, it will be enough to just straight Hydro Cannon down the Azumarill, which is sign of a dicey spot to be in. Oh wait, no, it's not even a charge attack thing. It's actually a HP thing, which means that this is actually, never mind, it's actually crazy IV dependent. So, you know, if we just have a slightly worse Feraligatr, a rank 679 Feraligatr in this matchup, I think that we actually, we are going to lose that one. Whereas if we have, you know, maybe if we have the rank 1, which is difficult to get for a Shadow Feraligatr, I mean, not only because you need that 0 IV, but, you know, Shadow Feraligatr, you are able to get the win just because you have that little bit of health to survive. So this is going to be a very IV dependent matchup. And unfortunately, there isn't really going to be a great way to gauge whether you're going to win this matchup or not. You can obviously try and have the best Feraligatr you can. And if you're the Azumarill in this scenario, what if it's like the best Azumarill? Feraligatr is still able to win because you do have enough HP in stock. And what if it's, you know, this crazy attack weighted level 41.5 Azumarill? Feraligatr is still able to get the win. Okay, so in general, I think sort of the lesson here is that if you go for a high rank Shadow Gator, you're actually going to have a better time against the Azumarill. And I think the important thing to see here is actually the amount of damage that Hydro Cannon does to Azumarill. So, because I've been talking about how good Shadow Feraligatr is as a safe swap, and this is one of the reasons why. You can swap in your Shadow Feraligatr. You can swap into Azumarill that is resisting both of Feraligatr's charge attacks, and its really spammy Hydro Cannons are still doing over a quarter of Azumarill's health. And when you're getting to these things so quickly, literally every 5 seconds, you're able to throw a Hydro Cannon. And Azumarill, not that quick. Azumarill takes its time to get to its charge attacks. You're able to outpace it quite well and just am able to add up too much damage against this thing. So you can see when we go to the 2 shield scenario, it's actually really comfortable because your pacing is so much faster than Azumarill's. In this matchup, Azumarill has gotten 2 charge attacks. Feraligatr has landed 4. That is the power of Feraligatr. It's how quick it is and how much damage it is still able to do. So Shadow Gator, if you want to give it shields, can actually really dominate the Azumarill matchup, especially as that safe swap. Regular Feraligatr isn't as strong, but you can see that it is still able to win here. Straight Hydro Cannon. It's able to take a player off on the chin. Again, this really comes down to it having, more HP in stock. So, actually, regular Feraligatr loses the 2 shield by 1 turn. I guess your Hydro Cannons just barely aren't doing enough damage? What's the deal here? Shadow Feraligatr is doing 1 extra damage per Shadow Claw. That's actually pretty huge. Wait, is this the attack Azumarill? This is the attack Azumarill. Let's set it to the rank 1. Yeah, okay, we do still win here, but no, Shadow Claw is still doing 5. So actually, yeah, the 20% Shadow bonus on Shadow Feraligatr means that your Shadow Claws are doing an extra damage per turn. Or per 2 turns, per Shadow Claw, which is actually pretty big in this matchup where it all came down to little bits of HP. So again, I think one of the other things I sort of want to stress is that Shadow Feraligatr is definitely seeming to be better than the regular one. Again, if we look at this matrix, like, it does say that regular Feraligatr is able to get some wins, right? It's able to get wins against Azumarill, against Clodsire, but like Shadow Feraligatr has ways to win this, right? So these aren't as cut and dry. Cresselia and Wigglytuff, they might be a little more cut and dry. Cresselia, because the grass knots are really going to hit like a truck. The Wigglytuff, the charms just do more damage to you because you are that Shadow Feraligatr. You're taking that 20% extra damage from every charm. But like, you know, to pick up these matchups, especially against Dunsparce, while still having Azumarill win cons and Clodsire win cons, if you're able to get a Shadow Feraligatr, it really feels like that's the way to go. I mean, some of the broader lessons that I think are sort of clear, but we're sort of seeing why that people say them. Like, I feel like a lot of people have been talking about how, oh, Shadow Feraligatr is better than a Feraligatr. I think we're sort of seeing the evidence of why that is actually the case here. The same with, you know, Clodsire being good. We're sort of seeing why, because as a safe swap, you are able to win all of these matchups, as well as just having a really good coverage. So taking a look at Dunsparce, the number 2 Pokemon on the Dortmund graphic, as we saw before, we do have a almost 60% win rate against the main sort of meta on the graphic here. But you've sort of got no super strong wins, and you have one super strong loss, and that is to Shadow Machamp. Now, I was saying this earlier on stream in that Shadow Machamp is sort of an RPS Pokemon if it is on the opponent's team. I'm specifically talking about the Show 6 format, so in Play Pokemon or in, you know, a Devon or something like that. Shadow Machamp is just a hard counter, and if you safe swap your Dunsparce, they are going to be able to safe swap in their Machamp, and just, it's not even a safe swap, it's just the most dominant swap you could get. So Drill Run, you can see here it does about 55% of Machamp's health, which is a lot. Like, that's huge for a Pokemon that is supposed to be like hard losing this matchup. The problem is that you are not going to be able to get to 2. you can come into this matchup with, you know, a rollout of an advantage, which is 3 turns. That's a full 1.5 seconds. You can swap into Dunsparce, and 1.5 seconds later, they swap in their Machamp, and then they'll still be able to come in and absolutely stomp you because they cross chop. And I was saying this on stream as well before. Cross Chop is one of the fastest move activations in the game. It takes them 4 Karate Chops to get to a Cross Chop, which is faster than Shadow Feraligatr. It's faster than, everything really. It's faster than Dunsparce, faster than Clodsire, faster than, what's another Pokemon that's actually quick? Malamar, it's faster than Malamar, getting to Superpower. It's really, really, really fast. And so you're able to get to 2 Cross Chops. Even if you shield one of them, is still going to lose. And even in the, if Machamp uses no shields and Dunsparce uses 1, Machamp is still able to just power through because the Drill Run takes them down below half health, but you're not able to KO them. They're able to hang on. And so just a really, really hard loss, and you need a lot of energy advantage to actually win this one as the Dunsparce. So outside of that hard counter though, you do have a pretty good time. So there's other Pokemon like Gastrodon that you don't really have, like, I guess they sort of do beat you pretty hard, but there's a lot of Pokemon that are sort of in the middle here. So on PvPoke, for those that don't know, I should have mentioned this earlier in the stream, but you know, here we are. If these are like low 500 numbers, it means they're relatively close wins. If they're close to 500 on the other side, they're relatively close losses. And you can see how many of these are just close wins. It's really, really close. And like, you know, say we want to look at, let's look at one of the matchups that is actually really good first up. So if we just go Talonflame, Talonflame is sort of on the other end of the spectrum where you just throw a straight rollout. You're in a pretty good position. You do have lose cons though. Unlike Machamp, where you almost are always going to like just, you know, get dominated that one. Oh, PvPoke's actually recommending Flame Charge. I think Fly Brave Bird is kind of the recommended moveset. It did really well at the World Championships, and it's been doing really well for a lot of people. If they can land a Brave Bird, you might be in a little bit of strife. So in this scenario, they throw 1 Brave Bird and you shield it, which is kind of weird. Like, I'm not really sure why it's simulating in this way. So like, say you throw a Fly here. Say you throw a Fly, and then you're able to throw a Brave Bird here, I suppose. You are actually going to be able to KO the Dunsparce. So you're not able to just confidently roll out all the way down, because if the opponent sort of gets this Fly bait and then is able to land a Brave Bird, or even though they're just able to land the Brave Bird, then Talonflame actually will be able to get the win. So as the Dunsparce, you do actually have to throw moves, but you're in a pretty strong position. So just keep that in mind. If it's sort of a late game scenario, you probably will have to throw the charge attacks because Talonflame can be very, very spammy to say the least. Okay, let's look at Dunsparce versus Azumarill. So it says Dunsparce wins with 1 turn of difference. And so, yeah, it just barely gets this last drill run. It's charge attack priority. And attack stat wise, Dunsparce has an attack stat of about 104 in default. Azumarill has 93.7. If we run the most attack weightedest Azumarill in all the land, you do get to 101. So if you run the most defensive Dunsparce in all the land. Okay, yeah. Dunsparce is going to win charge attack priority in every single universe. So as long as the game is working properly, you are going to be able to win this game in the 1 shield scenario 10 times out of 10 just by going straight drill run, which is handy. Worth noting that you do lose the 0 shield scenario just because the Azumarill's play roughs really do add up against you and you aren't quite able to get to the last drill run. Dunsparce sort of gets better the longer the game goes on because, as I sort of mentioned earlier, the first move takes 4 rollouts to get to, which is, rollout is a long move. So, 3 times 4 is 12 turns. And then the next one, it only needs 3 rollouts to get to the charge attack, which is only 9 turns. So, if you came in at this point and Feraligatr swapped in, you would actually be able to beat it to the next charge attack. So it's sort of like, goes 4 then 3. And so you're able to get the sort of really quick on the second one, but you still lose the 0 shield. And you go to the 2 shield scenario. And again, it's a really close call. You're able to get this drill run off and the rollouts are just barely able to tick down. Actually, this might be because we were playing with the IVs because 1 HP is kind of nutty, especially when it's just off of the rollouts. So I feel like, what did we set? We made this a super attack Azumarill. If we set it back to normal or like a rank 1 Azumarill, Dunsparce is going to lose that matchup. So Dunsparce actually loses the, all even shield scenarios if it's a rank 1 Azumarill. Because I guess Azumarill has enough HP to survive this last drill run. So I guess high rank Azumarill, and I feel like a lot of people have had time to get a high rank Azumarill. Maybe it's worth assuming that you are going to lose this matchup unless you know better. Just because, even though you get to these drill runs, it's so tanky. I mean, if we go back to like something, the default, which is rank 400, you barely win. But as soon as the Azumarill has that little bit of extra health, like this drill run does 41 damage and the default is left with 37. So it doesn't even need to be that much bulkier than this default simulation to just survive the drill run, get the Ice Beam off, and KO you. So it's a bit of a dicey matchup. It's definitely one to keep in mind that it's going to be IV dependent. So as you go into your matchups, know that this one could go either way. You sort of, if you're the Azumarill, I guess, know that you're going to have a little bit of confidence if you're a bulky Azumarill. You can keep that in mind because if you're a bulky Azumarill, you'll have a much better time. Let's look at Mandibuzz because it's actually a bit closer than you would think. I mean, at 560, personally, and maybe I'm just dumb here, but I see Pokemon throwing constant rock damage into a flyer. You should have a really solid win here, but that's not how it plays out. So it says Dunsparce, 4 turns can flip the win for a Mandibuzz, and you can see how low Dunsparce's health is actually getting here. The Dark Pulses seriously add up. They do almost a third of Dunsparce's health, which is crazy into Dunsparce. Like, Dunsparce, wait, how does this make sense? Dunsparce, has HP. Mandibuzz is, a very bulky Pokemon. It doesn't do a lot of attack, but, Dark Pulse is just really adding up against the Dunsparce, and it's actually getting kind of close. If you give Mandibuzz a little bit of an energy advantage, then it might be able to run away with this thing. It says the Dunsparce does win all even scenarios, and you're even able to win the 1 shield versus 2 shield. If you're the Mandibuzz in this 1 shield scenario, maybe you can be super bulk. If you're rank 1 Mandibuzz, lots of people are hunting that rank 1 Mandibuzz, Dunsparce, going to be able to get to that move, going to be able to take you out. What if you're a high attack Mandibuzz? Can you sort of barely do a little bit more damage? Maximize attack, rank 3,600. Dunsparce super wins. Oh my gosh, these rollouts, rock slides do so much more damage, and you're not even getting close. So never mind. So Dunsparce does win this one relatively handily. But it's important to note that if Mandibuzz is sort of stacking on a lot of energy before you come into that matchup with your Dunsparce, then you might be in some problems because this Dark Pulse really adds up, which is kind of nutty. Like I'm pretty surprised by that one, but it's what we're here to learn, right? So this is a matchup that I actually saw in a practice tournament of mine. I was running a Dunsparce. The opponent was running a Galarian Moltres. Now, I sort of made a read on my opponent. I was like, I think they have Galarian Moltres in the back. I think my Dunsparce is going to be quite strong, and so I wanted to preserve it a little bit. My Dunsparce got down to about 60% of HP, but I was still like, I'm still in a pretty good spot. You know, my Rock Slides are probably going to be pretty good. I hadn't done the simulations, and this is where PvPoke comes in. Rock Slide does about 42.6% of damage to the Galarian Moltres, which is like, hey, pretty good. Like, you know, that should be right. What I didn't account for was how much damage the Brave Bird was going to do to my Dunsparce. As I said, I had about 60% health remaining. They landed the Brave Bird, I didn't shield, and they were able to get the KO against my Dunsparce. Because I feel like I've got this perception where Dunsparce is quite a bulky Pokemon, and as much as it has more bulk than a lot of sort of meta mainstays of old, the meta nowadays is really bulky. So like Dunsparce, it still takes a lot of damage from a relatively attack-weighted sort of Galarian Moltres with a very attack-weighted move in Brave Bird. So you really do have to watch out for those things. In the default simulations, though, you are going to see Dunsparce winning this one in the 2-shield scenario, in the 1-shield scenario, in the 0-shield scenario, because you are doing super effective damage with the rollouts, you are doing super effective damage with the Rock Slides, and they are not doing super effective damage to you with the Ancient Power. And if they threw a Brave Bird in this spot, actually they win. So why... do they not have it yet? Oh no, they just barely don't have it, which is, why does it say 13 turns of difference? I feel like if you just give one more Sucker Punch, you throw the Brave Bird here and you win, right? Right? We click battle. Yeah, Dunsparce loses. So I don't know what it was. I don't think PvPoke just, you know, had to think a little bit there, but yeah, you're able to land this Brave Bird and win if you do have that little bit of an energy advantage. But I think in general, Galarian Moltres is more of a closing Pokemon rather than a Pokemon that you're going to see in a lot of these sort of like weavy matchups. It does feel like something you sort of bring out at the end and you just try to throw Brave Birds. Or you don't bring it at all, which is also a pretty viable strategy, I would say. But look, all this to say, Dunsparce, even though it is very anti-flyer, you do just have to be careful because there are some matchups that in the wrong position, especially in this current metagame where things do move around very quickly, you do have the ability to lose these. So don't consider Dunsparce as an RPS sort of Pokemon, except against Machamp. Against Machamp, it's an RPS Pokemon. Now, the graphic I keep coming back to is that dormant day 1 graphic, but what happened in the same weekend was the JOINVILLE Regional in Brazil. And the crazy thing about the JOINVILLE Regional is that rather than Clodsire being this big pick that was on 75% of teams, we saw a Diggersby takeover. Diggersby was on 6 out of 8 teams in the top 8, and only 3 Clodsires were running around at all. So I think it's worth giving a little bit of a look into Diggersby and seeing why Diggersby has sort of picked up so much steam in this Brazilian regional, and maybe seeing, you know, where it actually does pick up some wins. Okay, so I know it's not like the most fair comparison in the world, but if we sort of compare Clodsire and Diggersby straight against these sort of top 40 meta, and we scroll on down, you can see, you know, there's all the differences in here, but let's look at this summary, and this is crazy different. These Pokemon really do have very different matchups, so it sort of asks, why are people not using Clodsire? Why are they using Diggersby? And so let's just like sort of run through this thing. What does Diggersby do that Clodsire doesn't? Well, for one, Diggersby actually does pick up the win against Clodsire, which is big enough on its own, but you also get wins against Gastrodon, okay, Oranguru, Sableye, Shadow Sableye, Shadow Typhlosion. That doesn't seem great, especially when you look how long this lost list is. Ariados, Azumarill, Chestnut, Cresselia, Shadow Feraligatr, Goodra, Guzzlord, Jumpluff, Shadow Alolan, Marowak, Serperior, Skeletor, Talonflame, Wigglytuff. That's a lot of losses. That doesn't sound very good for Diggersby. So maybe it's not, you know, the most fair thing to, like, again, if we look at this graphic, like, they do have other Pokemon in their team that are able to cover those roles. For example, if we look at Harjeff is the one that sort of won this tournament. So he's running double poison type without Clodsire, so it does have the Toxapex and the Shadow Drapion that sort of provide you that coverage that Clodsire isn't able to do. So if we look back at the Matrix Sim, I know we're jumping around quite a bit. Even though Diggersby is losing against Pokemon like Azumarill, like Chestnut, like Jumpluff, like Serperior, like Wigglytuff, because it doesn't have the poison typing that Clodsire does, Harjeff has 2 other poison types that are able to fill that role and are able to beat those Pokemon. So I think it's not fair to give it a straight 1-to-1 comparison, I suppose. But just keep this in mind that it is really dependent on what you sort of build around it with your team. Actually, interestingly, exact same team as LNS Steiner and LNS Kanan was actually running a slightly different team, but identical teams here that both did quite well, and Harjev ended up taking it all out, even though this bracket isn't this is the slightly unupdated graphic. I could have grabbed the new one, but I didn't, so sue me. But anyway, here we are with Diggersby, so let's take a look at some of the in-depth matchups, starting off with the Clodsire one. Diggersby versus Clodsire, obviously we have the Scorching Sands, which is the big move that we're going to want to go for, and I guess on their end, Earthquake is sort of, the move to go for. It's still like, it's fine. It's fine. It is what it is. In the default simulation, Diggersby wins this one hard because Diggersby is able to get to the Scorching Sands faster than Clodsire is able to get to the Earthquakes. Then it's able to get this damage off really quickly. So you can sort of see, the first one gets shielded. You land the next Scorching Sands, which brings it down to down into the yellow. And then one last Scorching Sands is enough to KO it. And this is all, you don't even need any attack debuffs. Scorching Sands has that % chance of getting an attack debuff. In this simulation, it's done it on the very last one when it's literally meaningless anyway. But it's an option that makes this win even harder. But as is, you can literally just win it straight. Clodsire lands an Earthquake here. It isn't even close to enough to KO you. You're going to need another Earthquake, and you can actually tank another Earthquake. So even if Clodsire was used as a safe swap and it had a little bit of energy and it's able to get another Earthquake off here, you're actually still going to barely survive. So that really does speak to the bulk of Diggersby. And I think, this is a rank 169, but you can go even higher than that. I think mine is a level 50 Diggersby. So, if you maximize this thing, it's really just going to stomp all over this Clodsire. I mean, 20 plus turns of difference to flip the scenario for Clodsire. So definitely a pretty strong one in the 1 shield, and the 2 shield is pretty similar because, again, you are outpacing here. Because you get to these charge attacks faster, you just really dominate. And the 0 shield, similar scenario. Again, you just outpace, you get to 2 moves before they get to 2 moves. Simple as that, and that is why Diggersby is such a strong counter to the Clodsire teams. And when Clodsire is on so many teams, Diggersby can be that really good anti-meta pick that can really do well for you. So it's something to consider. Of course, Clodsire isn't the only Pokemon in the meta. You can look at something like Dunsparce, which is another one that is running around using that ground damage. Diggersby still winning this one with actually Scorching Sands double Fire Punch in the 0 shields. But if we go to the 1 shield, Diggersby, okay, we are getting a bait here with Fire Punch and then landing Scorching Sands. What if we just go straight Scorching Sands? So what if we try and be a bit more reliable? We still hard win this with over 20 turns of difference. So, Diggersby really doing well, just be able to, we can absorb all of these drill runs all day, every day, and we're just able to output much more damage. So, Diggersby working really strong here. Let's look at the multi-battle again. And this really tells you a lot about Diggersby. I mean, look how lopsided this graph is. You see, only 45% of them are on the win side, but all of these losses are really, really close. So a lot of them you can actually flip. Its hardest loss is against these grass types, the Serperior, Chestnut, and Abomasnow. And as much as they are doing really well, especially things like this Abomasnow, where it's able to get to these icy winds relatively quickly, a single Fire Punch does almost 60% of an Abomasnow's health. So if you have a little bit of energy, you're actually able to do pretty well in this matchup. 7 turns of difference to flip it. And if they just don't have any shields left over, you actually do pretty well in that matchup. So even if it's in its hardest matchups, you do have some ability to fight through, especially in a very dynamic game. Okay, Shadow Feraligatr is a pretty interesting one. It says a 495 loss, so a super close loss in the default simulation, and we can see how it goes. We're just going to throw Scorching Sand, I assume straight Scorching Sands. Here's another one. We don't get to a third, and it's just a case of Hydro Cannon sort of coming out before our Scorching Sands. Now, Diggersby gets to Fire Punch on the same pacing that Hydro Cannon comes out, but Scorching Sands being just that little bit slower means you're always going to be a little bit behind. So even though Diggersby can tank a Hydro Cannon here, Feraligatr can also, it can barely tank that Scorching Sand. So actually, if you push it to the 2 shield scenario, Diggersby can get the win here because it can take a Hydro Cannon. And Feraligatr can't take that Scorching Sands. But this is with the Fire Punch. So if we go straight Scorching Sands, no Fire Punch baits, Diggersby still able to clutch out that win. And again, with the attack debuff coming at the end, if the attack debuff comes early in the game, then that can actually make it like quite a strong matchup for you. I wouldn't say like super strong, but a relatively strong matchup. So again, even though like, you know, the PvPoke default simulation shows this as a loss to Shadow Feraligatr, if you really look at it, you really can sort of get ahead quite easily throwing this straight Scorching Sands, especially when it is just this close. And it's surviving on 1 HP here. If this Feraligatr is just that little bit worse, and again, we're assuming that Feraligatrs aren't going to be perfect. You know, these guys are shadow. You can't trade for them. You just have to grind them out. Most people haven't had an opportunity to get a shadow Feraligatr since it's become good. And so most people just have to run with the IVs they've got. And, you know, maybe they're decent like this 9, 12, 13, but like maybe they're much worse. And even if it's still this, ranked 900, all of a sudden, Diggersby's able to get the win. You aren't able to get to this large Hydro Cannon. You don't have that 1 HP to survive on to throw the move, and Diggersby takes you out. So really gets a bit dicey for the Shadow Feraligatr, and I think what it tells you is that Shadow Feraligatr, I mean, IVs matter, and when it's a Pokemon that's quite difficult to grind for IVs, maybe the Diggersbys running around have an even better time, and maybe there's a reason that all of these Diggersby were able to succeed in Joinville. In this stream, we talked about both Clodsire, the Sludge Bomb, and the Earthquake. We talked about how much that sort of high-ranked Clodsire really does matter. We talked about the Feraligatrs, the Shadow Feraligatr differences with the regular Feraligatr, how the Shadow Feraligatr definitely seems to be holding its boon, but it does have some key losses, especially if you don't have a good IV Feraligatr, especially to our friend over in the Diggersby column, who is quite a strong Pokemon. It's just straight Scorching Sands. Even though Fire Punch is very quick, it feels like there's a lot of spots that Fire Punch just isn't that necessary, and really I actually see Fire Punch as a bit of a move to use when you're in a bad matchup. It's like, I'm probably going to lose this, but I'll at least get some damage on the way out as well. And of course it's got that Scorching Sands potential debuff that can sort of sneak you out of some certain situations. We sort of learned that sort of Clodsire straight Earthquake matchup going into Shadow Feraligatr, which again, a bit of a surprise to me. Like, I know Ryblet mentioned it at the start of the stream, but yeah, straight Earthquake, you can actually do a little bit of damage. And we also sort of looked at we looked at Dunsparce as well, who seems criminal that it's only at rank 15 on PvPoke, but it's a very strong Pokemon that is able to get a lot of key wins. There is that little bit of a, you know, inkling that attack weighted Dunsparce can maybe do some work, but you know, if anyone decides to run attack weighted Dunsparce and has success with it, let me know. But it feels like it's not the recommended moveset. But yeah, all in all, you know, this was a bit of a test stream. We're testing something out. We're trying something new. Let me know either in the Twitch chat or in the comments down below if you are watching this back, whether you found this helpful, which bits about it were the most helpful, which wasn't very helpful, what would you like to see more of? Would you like me to just prepare more going into it so that I can sort of, this just becomes a bit more of a lecture rather than a study sesh with me? Because as I said at the start, maybe I didn't say it on the YouTube version, but this is very much for my benefit as well. I'm trying to learn these matchups, and I figured I'd just take you guys with me so that maybe you can learn a thing or two along the way. But with that said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially that subscribe one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Unbye. By the way, this was streamed live on Twitch, if that wasn't clear enough. So do go and follow on Twitch as well to, you know, see this live potentially next time, and also join the Discord because that's where I guess I'll be posting about it. I posted it on Twitter as well. But anyway, okay, bye again.